All right, guys, in today's video, I'm going through my 5 favorite interview hacks. Now, these work for everybody, but they're especially good if you are an introvert, especially those folks who are really good at their job, but just horrible at interviewing. That is often the difference between the folks who are able to make $200,000, $300,000 plus salary, get salary offers, especially in today's market. Really, the difference oftentimes is not somebody's ability to perform on the job, it's their ability to interview really well. So hopefully this helps somebody out there, and let's dive in. All right, let's dive in. So as we mentioned, these are going to be some of the best interview hacks that I know of to help you very quickly move through the interview rounds so that you can just, do what you do best, which is hopefully your actual job. Hopefully you're not spending, months or years practicing interview preps the way we do at Career Sprout. So these are my 5 favorite hacks to help you see things like this, where this is one specific person where he's hearing back from the hiring manager. You very rarely will get ghosted when you do this properly. You will hear back very quickly. They will be very excited about you, immediately pushing you through rounds, getting to round 3, within a week of starting the process. These are very common things that we see when folks know how to use these hacks properly. So all of that said, here is what we are going to cover. I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible, but I really want to make sure that for anybody who's actively searching for a job right now, I want you to be able to take this, implement it today so that you can get through your interview round. So it's going to be a little bit longer than what we normally do. So really quickly, we're going to go through the intro. There's 2 parts you got to make sure you nail. The tell me about yourself. Very important part to practice. We'll go through an example of that. How to respond to questions. How to be conversational throughout the interview. If it's not conversational, it's likely not a great interview. And then the 2-part interview close. Now, as we go through this, again, I'm going to go very quickly through it just because I'm going to keep it as short as possible. But if you have follow-up questions, don't hesitate to send me a message or reach out via email, katie@careersprout.com, and let's dive in. So very thankfully, as an introvert, you get to actually skip all of the small talk. You can, as soon as the interview starts and it's like, hi, how are you? How's it going? Cool. It's like, I'm doing great. And then you can dive right into this first question where you just say, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. John, I'm really excited to be here and learn more about the role. Before we do, I'm really curious, what was it about my background that made you, want to speak with me today? Really simple way to just start the question or start the interview. And by asking this question first, you are actually getting all of the answers to the test. This is the equivalent of you walking into, high school class, and it's a history test day, and you go, hey, Mr. Smith, can you just give me the answers to the test right now? And he says, yeah, sure, why not? Here you go. Go fill out your Scantron. Here's the right answer. That is what's happening. You are getting the answers to the test right off the bat. They are going to tell you what it was. Oftentimes, sometimes they give you a bogus answer, which we can navigate that in a different video. But essentially, they are going to give you the answers to the test that you will want to craft or cater your responses to make sure you highlight why they wanted to speak with you. So once you've done that, then you can usually sneak in another question. Once they respond, the next conversational question that you're going to ask is something that is very specific to them, where it's like, we're really interested by your background because it looks like you have, it looks like you're a product owner at company XYZ, and we're really looking for a seasoned product owner who has, worked on mobile apps or whatever it ends up being. So once that happens, and you're like, oh, awesome. Like, I'm really excited. I'm excited that that's what it was, because that was one of, my favorite experiences to date. And, if you don't mind, like, if we've got time for just one more question really quickly, I noticed on your profile that you were, and then you insert something about them. And you can do it very politely, just kind of like, hey, like, I know this isn't how conversations normally start, but I'm really curious about this thing specific to you. Whether it's, they were at T-Mobile for 12 years and then they went to Nike, or, they lived in Africa for a decade and then they ended up in San Diego. Whatever the case may be, what is something that is like genuine, that you are genuinely interested about? Ask them something like that. So if they once started a business, how was that like? What made them close the business to come here? Or what made them make that decision to, leave what they were doing to come work at Nike or Amazon, whatever the case may be. Very important that you squeeze in one of those conversational questions about them early on in the conversation, because what happens is it totally changes the dynamics. What ends up happening is this becomes more like, oh, I'm going out with an old friend for lunch, not, hey, I'm interviewing this person's like really buttoned up and, really nervous. So it just really it puts everybody at ease, essentially. Now, once you've gotten through that intro, always, and sometimes they will even get to this before you can ask the intro, so it's fine for you to politely be like, oh yeah, I would love to tell me more. Like, they're going to say, almost always the first question is going to be, tell me about yourself. And so if they do that before you have a chance to ask your question, that's okay. You can just say, oh yeah, absolutely. And then you can just insert. Before we get started about that, I'm just so curious, if you don't mind my asking, and then you can jump into one of these questions. So that is going to be the intro. Then, as I just mentioned, the tell me about yourself. This is something you want to have practiced and nailed before you get on the call. So typically they're about 2 to 5 minutes. 5 minutes is only if you have you're going for like a VP level and you have a whole lot of experience. Newer, if you're earlier on in your career, probably can keep it closer to that 2-3 minute mark. So this is a framework that this is an actual example. You can look at the framework. I won't read through the entire thing, but you can essentially take this and then map yourself over it. So maybe you didn't start your career as an HR professional. Maybe you started in product, right? And you did that. And this is, kind of your journey. This is the movie trailer of your journey. And then you're making sure you close the end at the end, you need to make sure that you are closing with why your journey so far has made you really excited about this specific role at this specific company that you're speaking with today. That is a very important close that a lot of folks miss. They'll just kind of talk about themselves, get nervous, ramble. Sometimes they get very braggy in this section. It's really important that you stay focused on this specific role, this specific company, and why you're excited about it today from a human perspective, not because the salary, not because, you love just the company name, because if it's a big company name that everybody loves, probably everybody loves that company name. So this is a framework that you can use and take for your interview. I won't read through it. Of course, you can just pause the video right here. Now, once you get past the tell me about yourself, so that's really like the full intro, is you asking those questions and then the tell me about yourself. Very often, or most interviews, especially early interviews, are going to be behavioral based. They're curious about how you respond, how you would interact with different situations. So here we want to make sure that you have about half a dozen STAR responses in your back pocket. So if you're not familiar with STAR, it just stands for situation. The S is situation. What was the situation at hand? What was the task that you needed to complete? What's the action that you took to complete that? And what was the result? Ideally quantifiable result of, that situation. So you want to make sure you've got about half a dozen of these. And I've got plenty of other videos, or you can just shoot me an email if you're not sure how to, know what questions they're going to ask you. There's very simple ways we can go about finding that. So have a couple of these STAR responses in your back pocket to respond to common questions. Here's a very common one for, project, program, product managers. They may get a question like this. Tell me about a time you worked on a complex project from a demanding client that involved needing multiple deliverables to be met in a short amount of time, and how you handled it. So the STAR response for that, we want to make it like a movie trailer. This is going to be a very condensed, overview, high-level overview of what happened. So great question. Here's the situation. This sounds a lot like a project that I worked on. It was a large-scale app development request. It needed to be delivered very quickly. It's for a new client. Again, I won't read through each of this, but there's 3 distinct deliverables that they had already committed to their own clients. Since this was due in such a short amount of time, here are the actions that I took. Very concise, very brief. And then here's the result. Not only did we deliver everything on time, but we actually delivered it early so that they had enough time to review and tweak. And it resulted in, us being viewed as a trusted partner rather than just a vendor. It resulted in over $750,000 in additional project work. This is a really great response. This is a really great length that you should practice condensing your experiences down to this short of a length. So as you are going through and they are asking questions, it's very important you have these really high quality responses. And don't be nervous if you're not here quite yet. Normally, as I just mentioned, like I was doing interview preps out the wazoo the last couple of weeks for folks where it does take a lot of practice reps and a lot of iterations to get this, really sounding polished. So this was not somebody's first draft by any means. They had multiple coaches helping them along the way. So once you've done this, even more, or I would say as important as your responses, is the conversational aspect of the interview. So when you do respond, you want to oftentimes respond with your answer, or the last sentence of your answer should be a question back to them. It's almost like you volley the ball back to them. If you play volleyball or tennis, I don't know which is a better analogy there. I don't really play either of those, but you want to volley the ball back to them and answer and ask them a question back. So a couple of examples of that, you can ask them, how you just answered that question. So an example of that would be something along the lines of, once you gave that response, like, did that answer your question? I know that was a high level overview. What would you like me to, go a little bit deeper on, get a little bit more specific on? You can just ask them questions like that. Perfectly acceptable. Or you can say, I'm curious, is that how it's currently done at Amazon, Nike, wherever you're applying? And then different questions that it's essentially asking them, like, either did I do a good job by responding to that question? Did I actually answer your question? You're not using those exact words, of course. Or the other version of that question is that how it's done here? Or is that what you're looking for this person to be able to step in? Would what you just shared with them, would that work in the current company and the current team, the way things are set up? Or do you guys do things differently here? Asking questions like that, just so that you can get them speaking. You don't want it to be, you just talking at them the whole time. You want to get them speaking, and then they'll give you really valuable information in their responses. So very important that you end questions with you end your responses with questions. And then other questions, especially at the end, when they give you an opportunity to ask questions, here are some of our favorite ones. Why is this position open? That's usually one that you'll ask earlier on to get that feedback. How do you measure success for this role? Again, that's a really great one to ask early on in the interview, because that is going to give you exactly what they're looking for. So you know how to, tweak your star responses to give them exactly what they're looking for. Maybe they're looking for somebody who's done, B2B. Maybe they're looking for somebody who has experience, technical experience, whatever the case may be. These are questions that are going to extract a lot of that information from them. Now, once you've gotten through all of this, hopefully you're still with us, the intro, the tell me about yourself, responding to, the middle questions with your own questions back to them, then comes the close. And this is where this is so important that you get this right. It's going to be a 2-part close. The second to last question you're going to ask is just going to be very grateful, great speaking with you today. Really appreciate your time. Do you mind if I just quickly summarize what it sounds like you're looking for in this role so I can make sure I haven't missed anything? Then you go ahead, and this is very important that throughout, this is why we ask questions, and it shows that you were actively listening. And then it's a great summary of, like, this is everything it is. And there's a psychological hack here that because you are the one summarizing it, they will feel like you really understood them, and they will immediately place you as like, yes, this is the person that I need, because, oh my gosh, they just said all of the things that I need. This is so helpful. And so once they say, yes, and you summarize, say, awesome, and you go right into the very last question and just say, awesome. Thank you again for taking the time to meet with me, and, just providing more light on the company, as well as telling me more about yourself. Before we wrap up, I just want to ask, is there anything about my experience or any of, my responses today that concerns you about my ability to perform this job at a high level, or just even move on to the next round of the interview process? If so, I'd really love the opportunity to just either clarify or, even confirm any of your hesitations. It's really important that this is very conversational. You can notice, like, I pretty much read that word for word. However, because I've practiced it so many times, so if somebody's unlikely to know that I was reading off of a script. That's your goal for all of these questions. You don't want it to feel like you're reading off of a script. And what happens when you ask this question is they will let you know if there's anything that you kind of missed along the way, and then give you, a pretty good indication. Oftentimes they'll give you great feedback if you did botch something, and then they'll give you a really clear indication of what to expect moving forward. So very, very important that you ask this question for your own benefit. It also has benefits where it shows that you have a really high level of emotional intelligence, that you seek out constructive feedback, and then that you can handle constructive feedback. So if they do give you some concerns, very important that you handle those concerns properly. So this video is already long. We've got plenty of other videos that walk you through that. As I mentioned, if you this is a very helpful, or hopefully this is a helpful video, let me know below if it was helpful for you. It's likely most helpful for folks who are actually landing interviews. If you are struggling to land interviews, I will leave a link below for a step-by-step guide it's the exact process that our clients use to land multiple interviews with companies that they really admire. I'll just leave the link to that below. But with that, hope you guys are having a good one, and I will talk soon.